All right, and welcome while we read about the Proclamation of 1763, which was a boundary and border law issued by Parliament in 1763. Now, if you remember, the Ohio River Valley, that is where the French and Indian War began. And the French and Indian War was the first front of the 7 Years' War, which is sort of like the First World War, fought between the British and the French. And eventually, at the Treaty of Paris, 1763, England, Great Britain, got a hold of all of the French territory. So England's territory in the colonies exploded and got much, much larger. And obviously the colonists who lived there said, whoa, look at all this new land. Let's go there. It's just out there for the taking. Let's go. So they did go out there, and obviously some Native Americans weren't exactly thrilled about, once again, their land being stolen. So they might have burned like 8 British forts to the ground, had to deal with the British army coming in and dealing with them. It was this whole hoopla. It was this whole mess. And it was expensive. And the British had just got done paying for the 7 Years' War, started by the French and Indian War in the 13 colonies. So England kind of saw all this debt that they had as being to blame on the colonies. But yeah, so what they did is they said, we're going to draw a line. We're going to draw a line and say this far, no farther. Colonists, like the overwhelming, insanely massive majority of people living in the colonies live to the east, to the right of the Appalachian Mountains. So just stay there. And we're going to create a huge reservation for Native Americans on the west side. Well, obviously the colonists didn't, exactly love this idea. So, after Indian grievances had resulted in the start of Pontiac's War in 1763 to 64, British authorities determined to subdue intercolonial rivalries and abuses by dealing with Native American problems as a whole. Let's just deal with all of it. To that end, the proclamation, this law that we're talking about, organized new British territories in America. The provinces of Quebec, up in Canada today, East and West Florida, and Grenada in the Windward Islands. And this one's very critical. A vast British-administered Indian reservation west of the Appalachians. The British own the land, but the Indians are living on it. They've always, for 10,000 years, they've lived there. Basically, it's just this far, no further. The Appalachians are a line in the sand, and the colonists are no longer allowed to cross it. This line went from south of Hudson Bay to the north of the Floridas. If you look at this map right here, we're talking about this line right here. This map right here is a primary source map. So it was actually made on the 29th of March, 1766, although there were some alterations done in yellow in the summer of 1767. And it shows these red marks here are where British troops were at the time. And this line is the Proclamation of 1763 line. And this is a line saying, don't go past there. If you notice, there are massive chunks of colonies on that other side of the line. And that was part of these colonies' original concepts of where their lands ended. They figured at the end of this French and Indian War, they could go live out there. But all of a sudden, there's this line that's been drawn right down the middle of them. They're not exactly happy about it. So this law, this Proclamation of 1763, forbade any settlement on Indian territory. It ordered those settlers already there to withdraw, go back, and strictly limited future settlement. For the first time in history of European colonization in the New World, The proclamation formalized, it made it official, the concept of Native American land titles. This is the first time that Native Americans have had land recognized by a European government. Not just some little agreement on the side with some colonists living down the road. The actual government in London has issued a fully official law that this is your land, rightfully yours. So obviously the Native Americans are like, oh, yes, it's about time. Now, although this law was not originally intended to alter Western boundaries, the proclamation was nevertheless offensive to the colonies as undue interference in their affairs, because obviously they thought that they had fought and died in the French and Indian Wars. They should be allowed to go there. This land was on their maps as being theirs, but there's this line drawn in it, a giant mountain chain, and they can't go there. It was frustrating. So I hope you understand what the Proclamation of 1763 was, and it plays a huge role in the motivations of the revolutionaries who will eventually fight the Revolutionary War. Hope you're getting this.